Listen carefully. Stop for a moment. Before you decide anything, watch this. This story didn't start today, and something here doesn't add up. For years, two names have stood above everyone else. Two groups, two legacies, two forces that didn't just enter K-pop, but reshaped it completely. The crown they're fighting for was never simple, and it was never just about music. Pay attention to what happened next, because this part matters. Don't miss this detail. What you're about to hear changes everything. On paper, the numbers look clear: charts, sales, streams, brand rankings. Every month, headlines tell a different story. One rises, the other follows, then suddenly they switch places again. Fans argue, media debates, but most people only see the surface. Focus on this part and look closely. Here, what most people overlooked. This wasn't a coincidence. BTS didn't become massive overnight. Their dominance was built slowly, relentlessly, across years of tour, albums, and eras. Even when members went solo, the group name never lost its weight. BLACKPINK took a different path. Fewer releases, higher impact. Every comeback felt like an event, not a routine. Two completely different strategies, yet the same global result. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. This battle was never just BTS versus BLACKPINK. It was consistency versus scarcity, volume versus focus, collective identity versus individual magnetism. One side mastered endurance, the other perfected anticipation. And both expanded far beyond the boundaries of K-pop. But that wasn't the end. What came next changed the direction. This is where everything turns. As time passed, the pressure began to build. Expectations grew heavier. Every release was judged harder than the last. This is where the pressure peaked. The criticism didn't stop. The silence became louder. Doubt slowly started to take over. For BTS, people questioned longevity. Could they still dominate after years on top? Could the crown survive change, enlistment, and time itself? For BLACKPINK, the questions were different. Was the long gap between releases a risk? Would anticipation turn into frustration? Could impact alone keep them at the top? Every move became a test. Every pause became a headline. Then came the moment no one could ignore. This is the moment everything changed. Nothing was the same after this. There was no going back. Brand rankings shifted again. Global demand revealed something unexpected. Even without constant releases, influence remained strong. Even without full group promotions, presence never faded. The crown was no longer fixed. It moved with context, timing, and perspective. Now everything makes sense. This explains why it ended this way. The truth finally caught up. There was never a single winner and never one definition of no one. BTS and BLACKPINK were ruling different dimensions of the same world. One dominated endurance, the other mastered impact. Together, they redefined what success even means in K-pop. The truth didn't need noise. It only needed time, and that was enough. But even that wasn't the full picture, because behind rankings and headlines, there was something quieter happening, something most people didn't notice at first. While debates focused on who was higher this month or lower the next, both names continued to dominate conversations without trying to compete directly. They weren't chasing each other. They were running separate races on the same global stage. Every chart update sparked arguments, but the real story was how neither side collapsed under the weight of comparison. BTS carried years of history, expectations, and symbolism. BLACKPINK carried scarcity, anticipation, and global luxury-level visibility. Different pressures, same spotlight, and neither stepped away from it. At this point, many expected cracks to show. Fatigue, decline, saturation. But that didn't happen. Instead, something unexpected formed. Stability. Even during quiet periods, their names stayed relevant. Even without noise, attention followed. That kind of presence isn't manufactured. It's earned over time. This is where perspective matters. Rankings don't measure legacy. Numbers don't capture influence. And virality doesn't equal permanence. BTS proved that consistency could survive pauses and transitions. BLACKPINK proved that absence could still amplify power. Both challenged the industry's rules without breaking under them. Pause again for a moment. Think about how rare that is. Most artists peak and fade. Most trends burn fast and disappear. But here, two groups stayed untouchable for entirely different reasons. One built a fortress, the other built a spotlight, and both held their ground. As newer acts emerged and competition intensified, the crown didn't fall. It hovered, sometimes leaning one way, sometimes the other, but never leaving the space these two created. That's when it became clear. This wasn't a rivalry meant to end. It was a balance meant to exist. Fans wanted a winner, media wanted a headline, but reality didn't cooperate. Because every time one side was questioned, results answered back. And every time doubt grew louder, time proved it premature. Longevity doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself slowly. This is why the conversation keeps returning to them. Not because they fight for attention, but because attention gravitates toward impact. BTS and BLACKPINK didn't chase the crown. They redefined what the crown even represents. Not a fixed rank, but sustained relevance. Now the pattern is impossible to ignore. Different paths, same altitude. One doesn't replace the other. One doesn't erase the other. They coexist at the top, forcing the industry to expand its definition of success. That's the real shift. That's the real outcome. And when history looks back on this era, the question won't be who ranked higher in 1 month. It will be how two groups stood above the cycle of rise and fall. How they endured when the noise faded. How they remained when trends moved on. The truth didn't need arguments. It didn't need fan wars. It didn't need constant proof. It only needed time. And over time, the answer became clear. This wasn't about winning the crown. It was about holding it together in different ways. Before that final realization, there was one more layer people rarely talk about: the human side. Behind every ranking update, there were years of pressure carried quietly. Expectations from fans, scrutiny from media, and the constant demand to prove relevance again and again. Success didn't make the weight lighter. It made it heavier. Both groups learned to move differently under that weight. BTS leaned into resilience. They adapted, evolved, and allowed time to reshape their journey without erasing their identity. BLACKPINK leaned into control. They protected their image, their timing, and their presence with precision. Neither approach was easy. Both required discipline most never see. This is why comparisons never fully worked, because they weren't chasing the same finish line. BTS measured success in longevity and connection. BLACKPINK measured it in impact and cultural reach. Different currencies, same value, and the industry had to learn how to read both. Think about how often narratives try to simplify greatness. One winner, one loser, one crown, but reality resists simplicity, especially at this level, especially when two forces refuse to fade. The longer time passed, the clearer it became that replacement was impossible. Succession never came. New names rose, trends shifted, platforms changed, but the center held. Even when activity slowed, relevance didn't disappear. Even when silence stretched, attention remained. That's not momentum, that's gravity. At some point, the debate stopped being about charts. It became about presence, about which names still carried meaning without explanation, which names didn't need introduction, which names still commanded attention by simply existing in the conversation. This is where legacy quietly forms, not in peaks but in persistence, not in noise but in recognition. BTS and BLACKPINK reached that point from opposite directions, yet arrived at the same destination. Untouchable not because they were perfect, but because they endured. And that's why the crown never shattered. It expanded. It made room for more than one definition of greatness, more than one way to lead, more than one way to remain. Now everything truly makes sense. Now everything makes sense. This explains why it unfolded this way. What once looked like rivalry was never about defeating the other. It was about endurance. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Not every battle ends with a single winner. Some redefine the meaning of victory itself. The pressure didn't break them. The criticism didn't erase them. The silence didn't weaken them. Time revealed what noise never could. This is why the crown never truly fell. It shifted, It hovered, it endured. Because it was never held by numbers alone. It was held by presence. The truth didn't need noise. It didn't need defense. It didn't need constant proof. It only needed time. And in time, the answer became clear. BTS didn't disappear. BLACKPINK didn't fade. They remained.